All right, ladies and gentlemen, the Persons of Interest podcast continues. Today, I'm excited to talk about definitely something that is a passion of mine, and that is graphic design. And I've got a guest to do that with me as well. His name is Steve Wilson. He's got a really impressive portfolio, one that I discovered here on Twitter. And this is a guy who I've just connected just from Twitter. And I saw his portfolio. For one, Steve, you've inspired me because I keep my own portfolio through a WordPress website, but I'm realizing that how much I don't update my portfolio, that I need to move it over to Behance. So I have started the process of creating a Behance profile page, and I'm going to migrate and update my work and move it over to Behance, as I do pay for the Adobe Creative Cloud subscription. So thank you for inspiring me to get on Behance, and welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thanks, Derek. I'm glad to be here. Yeah, I've had a Behance profile for a really long time now, and but kind of like you just said, I haven't used it for a very long time, and recently over the last couple of years, I really saw the benefits of putting my work on Behance, and have tried to update it a little more often. And it's really not only a great place to show your work and get your work seen, but it's also a great place to get some inspiration and connect with others in the industry, that you really enjoy their work as well.
Absolutely. And that's one of the reasons why I'm sort of back on there, or getting on there. And one of the things is, so I've sort of, after working in college athletics for a number of years and managing social media profiles, I've sort of slimmed down my social media usage. I'm not on Instagram anymore. I'm really scaled back my Facebook usage, and I'm really just mostly using Twitter. But, I can connect with people on there, but showing off my work without sort of quote unquote being too annoying, a little bit different. But I think Behance gives me that opportunity to do that. So that's why I'm I'm thinking of the mindset of that's going to give me the opportunity to keep my work updated and also stay inspired by following other designers like yourself. So
yeah,
I guess. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same way. I just use Facebook personally. I had a business page, and I still have a business page, but I'm not seeing a lot of interaction with, with anybody that's really going to benefit my business. It's really more personal, so I don't do a lot on Facebook. I've narrowed down my Twitter to just a business / personal account. I no longer have two accounts. And as a freelance designer, as a single employee agency, there really is no need to separate business and personal, because you are your business, and so your personality is always going to reflect in your business, since you're the only employee, and they're really one and the same. You are your business, and your business never really leaves.
Yep. That makes total sense. So I guess my first question for you, and I get this from folks when I, go and talk to high school classes, or, guest speak in classes or online forums or something like that. But for you, how did you first discover your interest in graphic design and design work?
I've had an interest in at least art for a really long time. I remember being really young and just enjoying doing art, doing things like making covers for mixtapes and things like that back in the day when you'd record songs off the radio and make your own mixtape. That shows how old I am.
Me too.
And so my parents enrolled me in some art classes back, when I was 11, 12, 13 years old. I still showed an interest in that in high school, ended up going to college, getting my BFA with the graphic design concentration, and then staying in graphic design ever since. Now, I've had a pretty crazy career as far as working in different places and doing some different things, but I've always had that interest in being creative in some way, shape, or form ever since I was a young child.
If someone were to come to you and say, I want to be a graphic designer, how do you explain to them how to do it? Because when I get that question, like a lot of me I want to say, well, I mean, being creative is like the one thing. Like I know several people that have said, should I have a should I have a master's degree in this?
Right.
What will help me go far? And I know some really talented people that A, may not even have a degree, or B, definitely don't have a master's degree, but their creativity and their ability to just sit down and, sketch something out or hop on Illustrator, just start putting pixels together and
Right.
vectors together, and all of a sudden they've got something coming to life. How do you explain that to other people?
Yeah, I mean, back when I was headed to college back in the mid 90s, most people would tell you to be a graphic designer, especially in the corporate world. You have to go to college. You have to get that degree in design. If you want to go and get a master's degree in art or a master's degree in communication, which I actually ended up getting as well, that's going to lead you into the career in graphic design. Nowadays, it's not that anymore. And I'm not saying by any means don't go to college,
Right.
because I think
Yeah.
there are some wonderful things you can learn in college as far as not just the creative side of it, but the business side of it. But
Yes.
like you said, there are so many talented people that you just see on social media, and you see how seasoned looking they are as far as, their final work. And then you find out that they're 16 and 17 years old.
That's
They're in
true.
high
Yeah.
school, or they're an intern at a college or stuff. And you just know that they have that creative brain, and learning the tools, can come. Anybody can go in and learn the tools without even going to college. You can go in and watch YouTube videos, or just go in there
Yeah.
and just learn the tools by yourself. But just having that creative eye and knowing what makes any kind of creative work successful, I think is something that some people are born with, and some people learn over time. I'm not a sketcher. I'm not an artist by any means. I'm a stick figure drawer kind of guy. But I've been able to have a career in graphic design, even with that limitation. So I think people they come for graphic design from different ways. But I think having that general creative mind is really the first step. To getting that specialty in graphic design. And then, there's still people that go to college now and get that BFA or that MFA, and they end up being very successful. But there's some that also come right out of high school and get on social media and just start posting work that they've done personally, and end up getting on with a team and being very successful.
Yeah. I think that's the one thing that's amazing is that you'll see people that will, they see a sports team or a business post something, and then they reply with a quote unquote upgrade, and then they can keep at it and keep doing it. And next thing you know, they're hired maybe by that team or somewhere else, or, some other business, because of they're a little bit more guerrilla, I guess, in the process of showing off their work. It's amazing. So it sounds like you're more in line with me, because we're probably coming from the same train of thought, where you're starting to learn Photoshop, and you do these things, and there wasn't the online tutorials. YouTube wasn't a huge resource of,
Oh,
well, how do I make this happen? You just sort of figure it out on your own. And that's how it was for me. I mean, I'm coming from the world where I learned freehand was the vector program of use when I was a freshman in college.
Yeah.
And gosh, InDesign wasn't a thing. Quark Express was the page layout program. When I first got my first design job out of college, and InDesign came out, about, gosh, I'm trying to think of what year I started using it. Maybe 2004, 5-ish, kind of, sort of.
Yeah.
And it's just funny how that's all just changed. And now these, not to mention how the workflows are changed, but also how the software has made things much more easier. Like, I'm thinking of when I first learned how to correct red eye, it was a little bit more of a, you click some things and you color correct and do this. Now it's literally one click with the tool in Photoshop to fix red eye, if you even need to do it.
Absolutely. And going even farther back, the first about 3 years of my degree, my BFA degree, I never touched a computer.
Really?
We were still, we were using, transfer letters and cut paper and hand drawing
Okay.
and, transfer cameras and things like that and blue lines. And it wasn't until my last couple of semesters in college that I actually started using a computer for design. And we had Photoshop, probably Photoshop 2 or 3. We had Quark Express, a real early version of Quark Express, and started doing a few things. Used Adobe Page Mill for making
Wow.
websites back then. It was kind of crazy, but yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I went through most of my college and never even touched a computer, and that's just the way it's so different now. Because really, if you want to learn design and learn Photoshop, you just purchase the subscription to it and get started. And like you said, there was the internet was there back in the day, but it was nothing like it is now. And there was no YouTube videos, learning tutorials. You bought a book,
Yes.
stuff
I'm
like
sitting
that.
here looking. Yeah, I'm sitting here looking in my home office. I actually still have some of those books. Like I actually have Macromedia Studio MX 2004 for dummies.
Yeah.
I have a Flash MX 2004 book, and I'm like, wow. I guess I was trying to learn Flash at that point.
Oh
Um,
my.
it's just amazing how it's just all sort of turned, and
Yeah.
now Flash isn't even a thing anymore. Like it's the continuous keeping up
Mm-hmm.
with it. Do you find it difficult now to stay up with trends and things like that?
It is. It really is. I have always considered myself, as far as a designer, as far as just concepts and trends and things like that, I've always been very simplistic in my design. I've always found that being more simplistic is it kind of stands the test of time a little bit better. But you can go on Twitter now and Behance and Instagram and see what the trends are in design, and you can just see it building and
Yeah,
building and building across designers. And I stay away from that as much as I can. Now I do try to, I see what some designers are working on, and I'll kind of try some new things or add in, some things that I know are popular. But I always try to stay as simple as possible in my concepts, just because, I've been in the business for a while. I'm in my mid 40s now. Learning while, I'm not that old, but learning new things nowadays comes a little bit more difficult than it used to when
sure,
I was in my
sure.
20s. And so, I try to keep a good base with not only my concept, but also just working in the programs themselves. You can drive yourself crazy just knowing all the different things in all the programs.
Yes.
And you'll spend all your time just doing that. And so I know we spoke a little bit before this. I find myself maybe taking a few extra steps in a program to get to a final product, but it's because that that has been ingrained in my head that that's how you do
Yeah.
things. And it actually may be as quick for me to do it the old way than trying to learn something new that a program has come out with. And so with me, it's as much as getting the product out in a timely manner, and hopefully, leaving myself the time to learn about some new trends, learn about some new programs and things like that. But not bog my business down so much in trying to learn new things, because you got to get the work out, and you got to get paid for it.
I'm so glad you said that, because I definitely remember I had a professor in college that he was just right on it every time that Photoshop was not a page layout program,
Absolutely.
and Illustrator was, you do insert things in different programs.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always sort of stuck to my guns on the same thing. And it's kind of weird because you see people who will use Photoshop as the end all be all, and that's it. And
Mm-hmm.
I continuously do things where, well, this is how I learned. And some people go, why are you doing it that way? Well, this is how I learned. And this is efficient for me. This is how I know if I need to change the type, it'll keep it this way for this format. And if
Right.
I need to go back and duplicate it, this will be efficient for me. And I think people sometimes lose sight of that because they see something and someone did it in Photoshop, so that's how they want to learn it.
Right.
I think the one thing about graphic design is that there's lots of different ways of getting from point A to B. And even though you don't always do it the same way, you can still accomplish a look by doing it in a manner that's efficient to you. So I'm really glad you said that, especially for someone that's doing it in the business, because your time is valuable. The software isn't free. You've got to do what you can you're running a business, and it has to make sense for what you're doing, because in a perfect world, you're not just going to do one project at a day. You're going to be working on multiple things over the time of hours. So it's not just you're sitting there doing one thing for 8 hours a day.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, I will say, young designers and people learning design, you've got the time to go out there and learn multiple programs and how to work, especially with your Adobe programs, how to work between them and work pretty efficiently. Get in there. I know Photoshop is it's the program that everybody wants to work in. It produces all, the sexy graphics that everyone sees online. But go into InDesign and learn InDesign. When you maybe get on with a company or get on with a team, or you're doing your own agency and a client comes to you and they want a 50-page magazine or a huge season media guide like you probably did back in the NBC. Knowing how to use that page layout software will make your life a ton easier. And I can't even imagine trying to do it in Photoshop or Illustrator.
Yeah.
And I think that's where a lot of your designers nowadays, a lot of your self-taught creatives, I think that's where they lack, is that they just want to use Photoshop because that's what they see everyone using, like you said. And they really need to get into InDesign. They need to diversify their talent as much as possible. Get in there and learn page layout, get in After Effects, even learn some animation stuff, learn some video editing in Premiere, diversify your skills. It will benefit you when searching for jobs in the long run. So, yeah, I'm in complete agreement with you on that.
You just led into my next question, because I was going to say learning motion graphics is something that's been on my sort of radar of wanting to do for the longest time. And now it's just a time issue of, between the full-time work and wanting to take breaks and relax and dive into it. But I've messed around. I need to really become, I've only sort of dabbled in, After Effects and Premiere. I started out and I jumped into Final Cut, and I've been a Final Cut Pro person for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And I've sort of been able to reinvent some of the things I want to do and make sort of unique, quote unquote, motion graphics. I can fudge my way through some things, of course. I'll put it that way. But I was going to ask you, just personally, which software do you feel you're most comfortable working with? Because for me personally, I can sit down in InDesign and accomplish just about anything. I'm pretty flexible in InDesign, and that's, to me, I'm comfortable with page layout. I can do social media graphics with the mix of InDesign, Photoshop, and Illustrator. And if someone texts me, I have a buddy that texts me for InDesign tips all the time, because he knows I live and breathe InDesign, because that's because, as a production artist, that's where I started. And it was, changing layouts, changing ad sizes. And, we've got this ad, an 8.5 by 11, but it's going to be run in these different publications, which means not all publications are the same. So I learned how to reformat and resize ads. And we did all that in InDesign. For you, what do you feel is your graphic design program or software that you're most comfortable working with?
Oh, goodness.
Photoshop, I'm good.
Yeah. Historically, I have the most experience in Photoshop. I was working in Photoshop right out of college. Photoshop 3, like I said. Photoshop 3 back in the day had floating palettes. It didn't even have layers. It was ridiculous to use, now that I have to think about it. But, as an agency owner, I really find myself on a weekly or monthly or annual basis using just about every program out there to do agency work. I work in Photoshop. quite a bit. I work in Illustrator quite a bit. I work in InDesign quite a bit. I don't work in like Final Cut, Premiere, or After Effects as much, but I do have some annual video projects that I do. So I work in those as well. I do a lot of web work, and so back in the day I was using Dreamweaver and PageMill and programs like that, but now I'm mainly just working in WordPress and hand coding on just using any internet browser using WordPress. So that diversification of being able to work in and being fairly well versed in so many different programs. I think it's what's made me fairly successful as an agency owner. I know there are people out there that they are Illustrator. That's what they do. Or they are Photoshop, and that's what they do. And they're known for that. They're known as a branding expert or known as a photo expert. There's people out there now in the sports industry that are known as jersey swap people. That's what they do, is jersey swaps. So they're whizzes in Photoshop, but probably don't know how to go into InDesign or have never really worked much in InDesign or in the web or in video. And when you are well known for being specific to a certain program or a certain area of creativity, I think that's great. And if you can make it work like that, that's great, because it allows you all the time to work specifically in that area and stay up to date with the programs and the trends in that area. That's great. Most people aren't able to be like that, though. You kind of have to be a Swiss Army knife. You have to be good at a lot and not really great at one specific thing, especially in agency work. And a lot of times, I'm speaking specifically about sports again, when you go and work for a team, whether it's college or professional or really working for any kind of sports club, as a designer specifically, you may be asked to do 10, 20 different things that you're going to need to have a little bit of experience in a number of different programs and a number of different areas as part of your job. So kind of wrapping that up, while I would say that I work in Photoshop more than anything, you really have to be well versed in as many programs as possible nowadays.
Yeah, and that's important. I mean, I think what I always try to tell people is that to accomplish all the different things, they are easy. That's why we have these programs and the way they are built the way they are, because they are easier to accomplish than some other things. Looking at your portfolio, the one thing that I always love is you've got several different items and different things. You've got comic book series, rebranding, social media graphics, posters, but you also have logo and wordmark designs. And people can't just sit there, and you can design a logo in Photoshop if you really wanted to. But to me, when I go and start doing a logo design, my first instinct is to turn to Illustrator first.
Right.
Partly because that's the way a professor in college, that's how we learn. I remember the first project we had turning on freehand was to design the backside of a deck of cards. And he wanted us to use Illustrator, freehand, which was prior to Illustrator, to doing that. And it forever made me see that, because I was someone that when I was in high school, it was Photoshop 3, and then I learned Photoshop 4 in college as it went on and on and on. But learning the difference between vectors and pixels and all these different things, vector versus raster. I think that's important, and I still feel that there are people that don't necessarily look at that. And part of this in me, this is the production artist in me coming out, where I know to look for resolution and all these different things. And, you go and print something out. It's like, why is that so pixelated? Then you open up, they placed in a PNG file or a JPEG that's been clipped, and it's not a vector file. And, you learn these things.
Right.
And I constantly want to tell people, it's like, hey, this is the difference. I know you probably have this file probably exists as an EPS or an AI. Can you send it to me or this and that? And they have
Hmm.
no idea what I'm talking about. So I always struggle to sort of describe that to people when I'm working with them on projects. But when you look at all the different things, photo editing, layout design, typography, logo design, I don't want to not to say that one's more important than the other,
Hmm.
but in terms of skill for you, one that you feel you're most affluent in of the different things in graphic design.
It's ironic. Like I said, when I started in the workforce out of college, I hadn't really done anything on a computer. There was not really such a thing as digital design to me, other than just a couple of class projects. And when I started at a real small agency, I started to do more digital work. But it was mostly print work. I was working in Photoshop. I was working in PageMaker and
Yes.
freehand as well. And then I got a job at a TV station in Nashville and was doing some broadcast graphics, mainly working in Photoshop, alpha channel work, things like that. So your graphics will show up on the screen, things like that. I then kind of started to work in some 3D animation, some video work to do some
Okay. Yeah.
some bumps and intros for stuff on TV and on the news. Was also still doing some print work. Then they started going, hey, we need some help with the web. We need a new webmaster because really websites were a thing, but they were just now. This is around 2000. They're just really starting to become something that people were going to. More people were getting the internet at home, and they were starting to go to websites. And me being at a TV station, they were really trying to start to improve their web presence, get news out there, get information about their TV schedules and things like that. And so over the years, I kind of ended up being the webmaster for the TV station, learning how to code on the web, learning how to scale graphics for the web and build and structure websites and things like that. Ended up getting a job at a university mainly doing web design. And it's just kind of carried on over the years that a lot of times I'm known as a web designer. I really don't consider myself a web designer. It's something that I do and I can do well. And I still have several web clients that come to me every year to this day. But, I still enjoy the print stuff. I've really gotten interested in doing a lot of the digital work. I still enjoy the video work and just being having to do all these different types of work over the years, over my different jobs. I really just enjoy being able to work on a large print piece and then stop and then go work on the web for a little bit and then stop and then go work on a composition piece, maybe for me personally, or doing a digital, a social graphic for someone, and then come back around and do, a branding piece or a logo, things like that. I really just enjoy the ability to
Be flexible.
be flexible and diversify not only the programs that I work in, but the type of work that I get to do. And that's just what makes this so much more enjoyable, because you're not just flipping the same widget, every minute all day long and then going, clocking out and going home. You're getting to do so many different unique things. And that's really what I enjoy.
Yeah, no, I'm with you there. I think, especially now that digital and social has become more of a thing, I can sit there and one of the things I always sort of, I don't know if it's a good thing to pride myself on, but I can often wait for an announcement for, someone to win an award. And then, one of the things now you see social media graphics in the sports world for those that are listening. And there's a big thing. You publish a graphic when someone wins an award, and especially in the sports. And I've got a knack now for, waiting for someone to the announcement and not knowing what they want or knowing what they're going to win something, but being prepared to have a template or have a graphic and ready to get that bad boy designed and turned around and posted within like 30 minutes, which may or may not be a bad thing. But again, the production artist in me, the way to set something up ahead of time, look for pictures ahead of time and, know what I need. That's one of my things. But then at the same
Mm-hmm.
time, doing a program cover for an event program.
Right.
The program itself, page layout and something as simple and rudimentary as listing out a whole number of names. I mean, what's the most visually creative way I can list this out and make it appealing for someone to read,
Right.
but also make it functional? I mean, that's, to me, all these things are just solving design problems. It's here's the problem we have. We want this to look like something that people want to see and make it look good. And that's
Exactly.
where we come in, I guess.
And you nailed that on the head. And that is something that I stress all the time when I talk to anyone about design, is that, they've always said for many, many years, form follows function. I agree with that to an extent, but I think they're one and the same. I think one doesn't just lead to the other, they both work together. And that, I think, form is very important. The look of something, the aesthetics of it. Nowadays, the way people are, as far as no attention spans, and you have your Twitter feed and your Facebook feed where stuff is just coming across your feed so quickly, you've got to be able to catch somebody's eye really quickly. And so the form, the aesthetics of a piece are really, really important. But the function of it is where I think a lot of people don't put enough effort in. It's got to be functional. It's got to be readable. Like you said, even if it's the most boring piece of just, a list of names, you are really a designer, a creative person is thinking, how is the best way to present that where it's not only readable, but it's something that's fairly enjoyable to read, and that it's, kind of pleasing to the eye. There are things that are readable out there that you just, after you read it, you just kind of stop for a second and go, man, that just hurt to read. And it was so difficult to read, and you could just see that there wasn't any thought put into the function of this piece. And so, the form and the function are so important when you do something. And I think that's one of the things that creative people in general don't get enough credit for, is the design thinking. It's the thinking of not only how something should look aesthetically, but how it should function. How it should function and how the end user is going to use it, read it, so on and so on. So, I mean, you hit the nail on the head with that.
Yeah, well, a lot of these things just literally come from college professors. That's what's been ingrained in my head, and I don't know if that's a good thing or bad thing. But
Right.
I guess if I were to go back and tell them and say, "Hey, here's where I am now in life," and I would be preaching the same things that they taught me way back in 1999 and 2000,
Right.
I guess they'd be impressed that it stuck with me. So, well. You've also written a book too, and I definitely want to be sure to get into that because
Sure.
this thing here has got it's impressive because I don't know of many design books that focus on. I guess I don't know if philosophical is the right thing, is the right way of putting it, but I mean it is. Your book is titled "The Why of Sports Design," and specifically when you're talking about sports design, which again, something that has been and continues to be something I'm passionate in. Even though I'm working in a K through 12 environment, I still do some design work to promote our high school athletes, things like that. But I guess tell us a little bit about your book. And I guess the first question is, what inspired you to even write this book?
Sure, absolutely. Yeah. Like I said, the title's The Why of Sports Design. I was very fortunate to be able to write it. So far, I'll put a little plug in here. So far, it's been read in about 14 countries, I believe. A couple of weeks ago, I got a message from a guy in Iran that had purchased it and read it. So just to know that, people in Germany and France and Italy and Japan and Australia and Iran and Brazil and have read it is just crazy to me. It's been read on five continents, which I just blows my mind to even think about. Little old guy from Nashville, Tennessee, is teaching design to people all over the world, which is just crazy. But the reason for the book and for writing it came to me after I've worked with a couple of colleges over the years, at them and for them on a contract basis. And what I noticed was, specifically for the sports departments, I noticed that a lot of times, a lot of these schools, and you've seen this firsthand as well, a lot of these places were turning design duties over to someone that may not have a background in design, such as a sports information person, a communication
Sure.
person, a marketing
Yep.
person, just an intern in general. It was kind of becoming an other duty as assigned.
Hmm.
Now, to that point also, you see a lot of the people online now that are those self-taught creatives, and they haven't gone to college for a design degree. And uh, while I believe they don't necessarily have to, I believe there are things you learn in college, such as certain foundational principles of design and working with others, how to critique your designs and how to go through different rounds of revisioning to improve your designs. Those are things you learn in a group setting in college that you may not be able to get learning design on your own. So those two things really kind of led me to write about not just what I consider the how of design, which is the programs themselves, how to actually do this, do that in Photoshop or things like that. But I wanted to write about what I consider the why of design, which is why do you do this? Why is the structure of a design important? How can you use certain rules as far as the rule of thirds, as far as breaking, a lot of
Yeah.
photographers know about the rule of thirds, breaking things up into thirds, how the eye moves around the graphic, how certain behaviors, personality behaviors by people, how it affects how they read a graphic, how type, how structuring type makes it easier for the end user to read a graphic. And like I mentioned a little bit earlier, the 8-second attention span of people, the goldfish attention span of people nowadays, being able to use kind of some foundation principles that I learned in college to help designers get the message out and get that word out to the users as quickly as possible, in an age where people just see so much content berating them all the time. And so, I mean, that's really the reason why I wrote it. Is it's for designers, especially designers that don't have a background or an education in design, but it's also for a lot of those out there in the SID departments, marketing departments, social departments, sales departments, even out there that may not have a background in design as well, but design is part of their job.
Yeah.
And some of these easy foundational principles will really kind of help them get a leg up on, producing things that are successful.
You've said you've had it on. People have read it from over 14 different countries.
Yeah.
What's been some of the feedback? I'm looking at the website now. You've got some quotes from some notable people that have made the investment in their personal enrichment of reading the book. But any other feedback you've got from folks that said one thing or another about their reaction of after reading it?
The main thing is, like you said, it's so easy to go on YouTube and learn about how to do something in Photoshop or follow step by step
Mm-hmm.
how to do a tutorial,
Yep.
how to make a design look a certain way. But just real simple things like the grid systems or how to think about structuring type, different levels of type, and just having a thought of, well, hey, the golden ratio, the Fibonacci sequence, all that teaches me that like a 1.16 ratio of spacing between type and a 1.16 ratio of header 1 type to header 2 type, those kind of things. Just keeping those kind of nuggets of wisdom in your head just makes it so much easier to structure a graphic and know that it's going to be successful. And that's what I've got from a lot of people. A lot of feedback is that just these little foundational things, because the book is real small, small chapters, real easy to read kind of nuggets, but it's things that are pretty easy that moving forward with your designs, it's easy to have that grid system ready or have that. I know that the golden spiral sometimes gets a lot of flack online from design people, but it is very useful as far as knowing, where the eye moves in a graphic and things like that. And then just the small things about how to structure type. that's the feedback I've gotten, is that they enjoy those kind of things, because that's something you don't get in a YouTube tutorial, or
Yeah.
you don't just learn how to do in Photoshop, and that it's helped them, and that's what I've really enjoyed is to get that feedback from people.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, folks to check it out. It is available on Amazon. I'll link to it in the podcast notes of this episode. The Why of Sports Design is his book. It is available on Amazon.com. Before I let you go, I got
Sure.
two more questions for you. My first one is, I'm looking at your portfolio, and I don't even know if this is on, if it's at the project that's in your portfolio. It may or may not be, but I'm curious to know, of all the projects you've done, is there one that stands out to you, that one that has been, I don't know if you want to call it your favorite, or one that you were happy with how it turned out? Just one that is, man, that is, I feel like most of us as designers have at least one, or maybe, a couple projects that's our badge. That's the one that is front and center.
Yeah.
And if someone asked me to show them my work, this is the first one I'm going to show them. Do you have that project in mind that is the one that is front of mind for you?
I've done so many that I've really been proud of. Working with colleges and doing schedule posters and brochures and media guides and intro videos and social templates across the entire season, and working with 15, 16, 17 different sports and different athletes. That's always rewarding, is to do something over an entire year that is consistent, that you can see the differences between each sport and the uniqueness and personality of each sport, but they all follow a very similar structure and a look across the season. Just seeing that is always very rewarding, because it takes so long throughout the year to come to form. I always enjoy that. I think the project that, it's already 5 years old, but the project that I enjoyed because it encompassed so many different things was doing the new stadium at Austin P. Let's go P, the Governors, where I got my bachelor's and master's degrees here in Clarksville, Tennessee. They opened a new football stadium, a renovated football stadium, back in 2015. And they asked me to come in and work on a contract basis on a lot of creative things. And what was great is that it was just so many different things I got to work on. I got to work on large scale locker room graphics. So, like 10-foot by 50-foot graphics for the locker rooms, which was new to me, just huge files, but just great to work, to put these kind of things in the locker room, to really kind of get the team hyped up and just to show school spirit and things like that. But then also doing things like, design for the scoreboard, wayfinding signs, field level signs, banners and vinyl clings on the windows of the stadium, the intro video for the first season in the new stadium, things like that, just to have a project that had so many different types of work, was just something I really enjoyed working on. And it took months and months and months to do, but it was just so rewarding to be able to, not only work for your alma mater, but to see, a project that encompassed so many different areas. And man, it was really fun.
Absolutely. That is one that's on your portfolio. I'm checking out now. It's APSU Stadium Environmental Graphics. The locker room is pretty sweet. I'm checking that out now. That does look pretty cool. It's got the Let's Go P in the background. Love it. That's pretty awesome. Love the outdoor banners, and even something as simple, and you wouldn't think about this, but from a functional standpoint, how important it is, a stadium map. Just where seats are. I mean, I don't think many people realize just the importance of just graphic design isn't always the flashy thing. Sometimes it's the functional thing too. So,
and the functional, that stadium map was one of the most difficult projects out of all of them, because
really,
it has to be to scale. It has to be visually representative of what they're going to see when they enter the stadium, and functional wise, it's got to get them where they need to go. And so if something's off, or you've got an icon in the wrong place, or the seats are oddly shaped, on the map, it's going it's going to detour people somewhere that they weren't looking to go. And so, the functionality of that piece over anything is something that, you really had to spend a lot of time on. And that was probably one of the more difficult parts of that project, but I really enjoyed it.
Awesome. It looks great. It looks great. Well, last question for you, and we've kind of sort of touched on this as we've talked, especially early on, but I'm curious if you were give advice to a young high school or undergrad, college student, freshman or sophomore, interested in design, graphic design, or sports design, in all facets of it, what advice would you give them? I mean, I've heard so many folks that say, like we've said here before, don't just focus on one. Don't just focus on Photoshop or this. It's good to know a number of things that'll help you along the way. But if you had to pin it down to one thing, what would be the advice that you'd give a high school student or college student?
I think the diversification, you've already hit on it, is the biggest thing. You really, actually, I'm going to give you two or three things real quick. Diversification.
Podcast, no time limit here.
I can talk about it all day long, Derek. Diversification is the huge thing. Like I said, there are opportunities there to be a branding and logo expert. There are opportunities there to be a specifically video expert and things like that. But you're much more likely to be successful either working for a team or a business or working for yourself with an agency. You have many more opportunities to be successful if you diversify. If you not only learn the various programs across the kind of the gamut of creative that you need to know. Now, I don't say you have to have a mastery in all of them, but you need to kind of have an idea of how to work in a lot of them. Not just that, but you see it a lot with these sports designers, a lot of young sports designers, which they do wonderful work. I mean, it's really great work. It makes me as a mid-40s guy kind of jealous at how good some of it looks. But they're really starting to only specify on doing certain composites with 3 players on it, and it looks a certain way. Get away from that. Try to work on a branding project. Try to do a personal branding project or something. Work in Illustrator. Try to do some logos. Get on and sketch. Do some sketch work. Get into After Effects. Maybe try to do some rudimentary animations just to kind of know how that works. Work in type. Learn how type works. Just experiment with it. Get into InDesign. Experiment with layout and how to do that. It's just diversification is I'm not going to say it's easy by any means, but I think it's the easiest way to make yourself the most valuable that you possibly can to as many people and organizations that you can. If you can do these things and show it in your portfolio, I think it makes you a lot more valuable. And see, I've already forgotten what the other things are. Oh, no, I know what the other thing is. Learn about the business of design. Now, I don't think you necessarily have to be a freelancer or an agency owner to know about the business, but every creative at some point in their professional life does work on the side, or they flirt with the idea of going out full time. Knowing the business, just the general things, how to invoice, how to work up a contract, how to talk about money with clients, how to make budgets, knowing what your strengths and weaknesses are, how to negotiate certain things with clients, just the business of it from a freelance agency standpoint sometimes can take up a lot of my day. But, you have to know those things to be successful. It's not just about getting in front of that computer and opening up Photoshop and going to it. There's a lot more to it, and knowing a lot about kind of the business and having a business background, I think will benefit you in the long run.
I agree wholeheartedly with that, because I think the number one most important thing, especially as a freelancer, is being able to know how to protect yourself when you're doing work. And part of that is the business side and knowing how to properly talk to potential clients, current clients, wherever it is. and that contracting process isn't one that's always easy for folks that, as a designer, you've always had someone else handle that for you. But that's one I can definitely get behind, because it's not one that I've done a whole lot. I've never done tons of freelance. We talked a little bit before we started recording that I've flirted with it here and there, and have even said no to some folks, either because of my own apprehension or just being, too busy with other things with the full-time work. But at the same time, we've all, like you said, someone, you'll get a family member, you'll get the friend from work that has the personal thing. They want to do something for their kid.
Right.
Being able to protect your work. I mean, photographers talk about that stuff all the time, is that, they don't just, they protect their photography, and it's not just out there for everyone to use. They pay money for their equipment, they pay money for their time, and it's, you're not just giving yourself away. It's the same thing for designers, because even if you go out and buy a stock photography to use in a project, even if you don't, and you do work and you come up with something that's completely original, you've got to be able to protect your work and know what you're doing with it and the intent in the long run. So that's definitely good advice there. That's one I can certainly appreciate.
Exactly. And the way sometimes creatives seem to be devalued in the workplace. A lot of times creative jobs, whether a full-time job or on a per project basis for a freelancer, a lot of times those jobs tend to pay less. They tend to be devalued from a client side. Oh, you'll do it for this or whatever, that kind of talk. You've got to be able to be comfortable talking about money and be comfortable, like you said, working with contracts so that you are protecting yourself and you're ensuring that you're going to get paid.
Yeah, absolutely. Steve Wilson, you guys should go follow him on Twitter at Score Creative. Check out his website, IamSteveWilson.com. There you'll find a link to his book, The Why of Sports Design, which is available on Amazon.com. Steve, I really appreciate you taking this time to do it. I could have honestly just continued to talk to you just about design stuff like for another hour and a half, but I definitely want to be appreciative of your time and pretty much thank you for being on. And we definitely have to catch up again, because this is fun. I love talking with someone about something that I'm so passionate about, that my ideals also line up in the same way. So you kept saying 44-year-old guy. I'm right there with you, man. I just turned 40 this year, so we're right there in the same path.
Absolutely, Derek. I'm with you. I can talk about it forever. I think I have as much to say about design as I actually do design nowadays, but I appreciate you having me, and let's do it again sometime.